Hello, everybody, and welcome here to East Texas Today on KETK Plus. I am your digital host, Haley Hines. Y'all, if we're looking at the time, it's 9:02. I'm 2 minutes late to start with you all. It won't happen again, but happy Friday, you all. I do have to say, we are going to start off on a different note this morning. We're recapping something that happened last night. An East Texas man, Blaine Millum, was put to death last night for taking part in the brutal killing of one of his girlfriend's 13-month-old daughter. Now, KTK's Ashlyn Anderson was granted access inside the viewing room, and she was a witness there, and she brings us those details. Now, we do want to give a warning to our viewers that some of this information and some of the details may be disturbing, but we're going to go ahead and show you all Ashlyn's recount of her experience in that viewing room. So here that is.
I was able to be a witness to the execution of Blaine Millum tonight. His time of death was 6:40 this evening, and it was a very somber moment on the side I was with. I was with his friends on the side to see his head. He had 3 friends that were able to be in there with him, and we were in this prison. We were walked over, and we went in around 6 o'clock, and both the victim side was able to watch a Morris family, the Rusk County DA, but also Blaine's friends as well, but they were separate the entire time. So I was with one side, and the victim side got to go in first, and so we were waiting for about 15 minutes until we were finally able to go into the room. And the room, it was long, it wasn't wide at all, and where you could see Blaine, it was a glass panel, handlebars, and then another glass panel, and he was laying there. Since we were by his head, we could see him. His arms were out at a T. He was wearing all white, and he had a sheet up to his chest, and he looked over and saw his friends and kind of gave a head nod. And the warden asked if he had any last statements. He did not have a spiritual advisor. He opted out of having one at this time. Normally the spiritual advisor would say something, but he opted out. So he just went with his statement, and I'm gonna read part of it. He thanked everyone for showing him kindness, compassion, empathy, love and support, and believing in me. And he also thanked TDCJ for opening up the faith-based program on death row to allow me to accept into finding Jesus Christ, our Lord and Savior. He went on to thank more people, and at the very end he said, "I love you all. Bring me home to Jesus." There was a microphone right above him. He looked at his friends in the room part I was in and said, "I love you." And all of his friends, those 3 friends I mentioned, started to cry. They were at the window. I was a little further back. There were correctional officers in there as well, a chair if someone needed to sit down. The door was closed behind us as well. And he looked up, and the injection happened. I couldn't see one of the arms, but I assumed when the injection went in, he looked up, closed his eyes, and he started to breathe, really like snoring. It was in, it was out. It was really heavy at times. A couple of seconds go by, and it would get faster. A little faster. His chest is moving up and down. People in the room are crying and sniffling, and then it would go slow again, and then it would happen again, and it would go faster. And then that happened for a couple of minutes of him breathing until he eventually stopped breathing, and his friends in the room were crying more and more, and we just stared at him as he took his last breath. And then about 15 minutes, 20 minutes go by. A physician came in the room, checked his eyes, checked his lungs, checked his stomach, and told the warden time of death was 6:40. And then the warden repeated 6:40. And we were just still standing there until it was time for all of us to leave. And they were sniffling, friends in the room were sniffling, they were holding hands. When they would end up turning to look at each other, they would shake their head no, that they couldn't believe it. They were big in disbelief, and in my mind, this is a very somber moment, and I'm just kind of watching this all go down. And it was kind of surreal in that moment, finally being in there. It was cold in the room as well. The door, kind of steel door, locked behind us, no way to get out. It was very long, it wasn't wide at all. And then again, the warden called time of death at 6:40. The Rusk County DA was also on the victim's side, and he spoke to us afterwards. Hear what he had to say.
We will never know what Amora would have contributed to our world. Her death calls us to steel ourselves, to look upon truth, and to stand against the evil inherent among us. Answering the call for justice from the most helpless is the measure of a civilized people.
And good friend of Blaine Milam's, Jennifer Martin, was also out here protesting today. Listen to what she had to say about her fighting for her friend.
I think they should have taken more time. He's not going to die in vain, though, because what was filed with the Supreme Court, even though it was denied, will live there forever. So his case is going to be used in the future to help others, and that's his main goal. He was more concerned with everybody else today than himself.
Blaine Milam is the 5th person in Texas to be executed this year. The last person set to die on the schedule this year is another East Texas man, Robert Robertson, on October 16th. And then also Blaine's, some of his last meals. He had a lot of last meals before all of this happened. It was a cheeseburger, green beans, pinto beans, and a lot of ingredients like that. The communications lady, before we went in, she goes to check in on him. He said he did have a lot of anxiety. His head was hurting as well, as anyone probably could imagine. But so for now, reporting in Huntsville, Ashlyn Anderson, I'll send it back to you.
All right, and that, like I said, was Ashlyn Anderson discussing yesterday's execution that happened here in East Texas. Now, we're going to come back to me, you all, and we're going to switch gears here just a little bit to a different topic that has really swept across the nation as of recent. This is the topic of what is the cause of autism, and people tend to point fingers on the potential causes of the disorder. And in response to people questions, East Texas experts and facility directors sat down with our Ella Mitchell to discuss firsthand what the condition really is. And again, Ella Mitchell is going to bring us that story here. So here that is.
As people point fingers on the potential causes of autism, experts and facility directors tell us firsthand what the condition really is.
It's the ability for people on the autism spectrum to filter through all of the sensory input that they receive in a very different way than you and I do.
Cheryl helps run Elijah's Retreat in Jacksonville. It's a camp focused on children living with autism. She says the disorder impacts what they hear, see, and feel, putting them in a constant state of fight or flight. And that's why they focus on hands-on activities.
What they can do to cope is they are able to focus in on one thing to try to kind of ignore other things. And so they find things that they're really passionate about or things that they really like, and they zero in on that.
You have probably heard autism described as a spectrum, but may not fully understand what that means. Cheryl says people can fall anywhere on that spectrum. Some can be nonverbal, and others may have a shorter social battery.
I do think that it is unfair to say that somebody who is maybe lower functioning doesn't have possibility, and to say that somebody who is high functioning doesn't have struggles and would be unfair as well.
With more people being diagnosed, autism has become a bigger topic of discussion, but there are also many misunderstandings about the disorder.
The funny thing about misconceptions is that we do have a lot of them, but the fact that people have them, it means that they're at least paying attention.
Robert works with the ARC of Greater East Texas, a nonprofit dedicated to helping families with loved ones facing disorders. After the Tylenol announcement, he's concerned some parents could be blaming themselves.
I don't want any mom to feel like it's their fault because they took something that their doctor told them was approved. There's already enough guilt on parents.
Thankfully, there are now more resources in East Texas for these families. But Cheryl says the best way people can help is by promoting a sense of community and patience as these kids learn new sensory coping skills.
And they're willing to take whatever criticism that takes because they love their child.
Encouraging East Texans to continue to ask questions and be judgment-free. Ella Mitchell, KTK News.
Well, again, that was Ella Mitchell with that story. I think there's a lot of details from that we can definitely learn just to stay curious and to be open to different walks of life here in the world. So, again, very, very great and well put together story with a lot of good information. Now, we're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, we will have an interview where our East Texas Live host, David Gibson, sat down with a News Nation anchor to discuss his new book, and we'll learn more about that right after this break. Well, hello and welcome back here to East Texas Today on KETK Plus. And as I stated before the break, East Texas Live host David Gibson sat down with News Nation anchor Leland Verder to discuss his new book, Born Lucky. And you all, I want to say this is a great interview, and News Nation is really close to us here at KETK Plus. You all probably watch them later in the day. It'll come on right after we wrap up this morning. But you all, I want to go ahead and jump into this interview so we can learn more about this new book, Born Lucky. So here that is.
Welcome back. News Nation's Leland Vittard and his father were determined to break the world's labels on being placed on people in his new book, Born Lucky, that is out now and available on Amazon. Leland details his journey with autism and his father's dedication. He joins us now to talk about his book. How are you doing today?
David, it's nice to be with you. Thank you.
Yes, sir. So your parents never told you about your autism or anyone about your autism diagnosis. Why are you writing this book now?
It's a great question. And you think it doesn't have anything to do with the timing of the discussion about autism, but so many parents feel the way mine did. When I was 5 or 6 years old, they were told that I needed to be evaluated. No parent wants to hear that. So they get me to some psychology testing center, big medical office building. They're in the waiting room, linoleum floors, stale coffee, old magazines. And waiting for me, they're nervous, and out walks the woman who'd done the testing. And she says to my parents, look, he's got a lot of problems. No social skills, actually sort of repellent social skills. Kids could not interact with me. I could not interact with them. Major spread in an IQ test from what is a learning disability that's a 20-point spread between the two halves of your IQ test. I had about a 70-point spread. So in some ways genius, and in other ways, in the parlance of the day, mentally retarded. And she said it is very difficult to understand what's going on inside his head. And my dad said, is there anything we can do? Any parent would ask that. And she said, generally not. So you can imagine how hopeless and helpless a parent feels at that moment. So this book, Born Lucky, it is my story, but it's about all of the families who are suffering right now. For every family, this is real hope, whether a kid is suffering with autism or ADHD or anxiety, whatever it is, the bullying that goes on in school right now, this is real hope that a parent can make an enormous difference, which is the hope my parents weren't given.
Yes, sir. And so why did you kind of want to dedicate this book to your father?
It's a great question. This is really a love letter to my dad and a thank you. You know, he quit his job. He said, I knew that you wouldn't have any friends, so I decided to become your friend. And he was. Every day he was there when I got home from school to put me back together. So 8th grade, I'm in art class. I write the story in Born Lucky. One of many days that was awful in growing up. And a teacher didn't think I was going to become Picasso. He was right. But in front of the entire art class that were sitting there with paintings and whatever else around, he says, you know, Vittert, if my dog was as ugly as you, I would shave its rear end and make it walk backwards. Okay. Humiliated, crushed, defeated, I came home from school. And my dad would then spend 3 or 4 hours kind of putting me back together. I would take out my anger and my frustrations on him. And then he would leave my room. I'd either go to sleep or have homework to do or whatever. He'd leave my room and go downstairs. And I didn't know this until I started writing the book and interviewing him. But then he would start crying by himself, alone in that dark living room, day after day after day after day. And the next morning, he would get up and take me to school because he felt as though the best thing to do for me was not to take the adversity away, kind of put me in the bubble, have the world adapt to me. He wanted to adapt me to the world and hold my hand through the adversity.
Yes, sir. And this book, His Lessons, goes far beyond autism. What is your message for families of kids who are struggling, and can you put a face on autism for us?
Look, I am not professing to have a cure or a prescription or any of those things. This is a parenting book, but written from the perspective of a kid, right? So there's a big difference there. And the whole idea here is to show parents the difference they can make, right? George Will wrote about the mountain-moving power of parental love. And my dad writes the afterword. I think it's one of the best parts of the book, the best. And he said I had zero expectations, which is mostly true. But the expectations he had of me were of character and hard work, which anyone can control, no matter what the malady or issue or difficulty is. And for him, self-esteem was earned, not given. So starting when I was like 5 or 6 years old, he was having me do 200 push-ups a night or a day. If I did that for 3 months, there was a reward at the end. And it was to teach me, even if I couldn't be good at school, I couldn't be good at sports, I couldn't be popular or have friends, there were things I could be good at and could take pride in because I could do them. And that is a message that works across any part of the difficulties of growing up.
Yes, sir. And so where can people get more information on your book?
Well, David, I don't want anybody to stop watching the program right now, but pull out your phone, go to Amazon. It's available right now. Born Lucky, just type it in. The book comes up. It's on Amazon, and then there will be a special on News Nation this Sunday night with Bill O'Reilly. So the special and the book go together, and it is a message of real hope. And I'd be honored for folks to come along on this journey with me.
Yes, sir. And tell us a little bit about that special. What kind of things you're going to be talking about?
Well, look, David, you know that as a journalist, it's failure when you become the story. I am the story here. Every TV anchor writes a book. But this is going to be different because rather than me just yapping, I'm going to hand saying how wonderful I am. Bill O'Reilly is going to come on and talk to me about this story and challenge me about this story in a way a journalist does. So you'll get a very different perspective on this story, and I think one that's important, that if we're going to, if I'm going to be honest as a journalist, if I'm going to try to tell my story, I have to question it the same way I do everybody else who comes on my show.
Yes, sir. And with all this stuff going on in in the news and things like that, can you just put a face on autism, kind of what it is for people that don't know what autism is and how you're living with it and being a news anchor?
Yeah. Look, it's a great question, David. I don't know whether it's Autism Society or Autism Speaks, but they say that if you've met one kid with autism, you've met one kid with autism. And autism is different for everybody. I can tell you, for me, it's still something I struggle with. I was at my father-in-law's golf course a couple of weeks ago, and one thing about autism is you can get very focused on one task and sort of space out the rest of the world or shut it out. And I was trying to pack my golf bag, and I was late for something, and there was a guy who I'd played golf with my father-in-law who came over and wanted to talk to me. And I was just horrifically rude to him because I was just in my little zone, in my world. And even as I was doing it, I realized what I was doing was wrong. I sort of couldn't help myself. And afterwards, I wrote him a long note and just said, God, I am so sorry. I was so rude to you. Never use what I have been diagnosed with or anything like that as an excuse. That was never allowed in my house. The standard is the standard. But by way of saying, David, I think there's still a lot of people who are out there who are really struggling. And as I said, this is a message of hope that everybody with real dedication from their parents can be more.
Yes, sir. Well, Leland, thank you so much for your time.
All the best, David.
Thank you. For more information, go to the website right there on your screen. We'll be back with more KETK's East Texas Live in just a couple of minutes. Stay with us.
Let me tell you a story about a kid. Shy, bullied, diagnosed with autism. Something that affects 1 out of every 31 kids in America today. But this boy had a dad who refused to let that diagnosis define his child. You see, that boy is me. That father is mine. I'm Leland Vitter. Join me and my good friend Bill O'Reilly as we give hope to other families. My story, Born Lucky, Sunday at 8, 7 Central on News Nation.
Well, y'all, that was such a heartwarming story. Beautiful to see him write that love letter basically to his father. Just a truly a great story of perseverance, of becoming something, even if you feel like, odds are stacked against you. Awesome. I love to see it. And so happy to see that he's going to tell his story on News Nation. Now, you all, I will do my best to be able to get this here on KTK Plus. So if you want to tune in to watch that, I would say keep it for that regular time. So 7 or 8 or 8 o'clock, here on KTK Plus. And we'll see if we can get that up for you all so that you'll be able to tune in to hear Leland's amazing story there that he has and about his book that he's written. So yeah, that's going to wrap up this section of our show. But when we come back, we will have, I was going to say David. No, we'll have Braden. If David gave the weather, that would be interesting. But we'll have Braden CO here sitting across from me with our weather when we get back after this break. Well, hello, everybody, and welcome back here to East Texas Today on KTK Plus. Today is one of those days where I said what we were going to have after break, and it's happening. Braden CO is sitting across from me. Braden, how are you doing this morning?
Doing good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm excited to talk a little bit more about the weather because I walked outside and it wasn't steaming hot. That's some good temperatures. Talk to me a little bit about this morning.
Yeah, certainly. We had those temperatures down into the upper 50s, lower 60s here across East Texas. Really feeling like fall out there, low humidity, all thanks to that cold front that we had earlier this week.
That is awesome. It's amazing how much our temperatures have dropped from seeing like near 100 degrees to waking up to 60s. Like I'm so happy and excited. And I actually have a story coming up after this, you all, where we're talking about that dry weather that we're seeing. And Braden, I know that you can tell me a little bit about it, so I'll let you take it over.
Yeah, absolutely. This morning, we're looking at mainly sunny conditions out there to start off the day. Really just a fantastic start to our Friday. Really can't ask for better conditions out there. Looking at that temperature right now, about 67 degrees. Winds are calm. And as we look here at what we're seeing for you across the region, there's that front that gave us, of course, the storms the other day. Now it has moved down to the south and east here. And that is giving us a lot of clear skies here across most of the Lone Star State this morning. And as far as those temperatures go, still in the 60s in numerous locations this morning. 77, though, as you head down into Houston, 74 in San Antonio. It's about 61 up in Amarillo. And as we look here locally, we are sitting in those 60s and lower 70s across much of East Texas. And those temperatures are expected to warm into the 80s as we go into this afternoon. But keep in mind that light north wind, low humidity, that's going to make for a very pleasant feel to the air out there as we go through the day. And going into tonight, we're going to see those upper 50s, lower 60s here across the area. So another cool, refreshing start to our day on Saturday with warm temperatures expected once again as we head into the afternoon. Here's a look at that temperature trend, and it's going to remain very steady here through the next 7 days, not expecting really any significant variations in those temperatures, both in the afternoons and in the mornings, with that normal morning low about 64. And check that out. It's looking like we're going to see those morning lows stay right there around where we would expect them to be for this time of the year. As we look out in the tropics right now, things are quiet here in the Gulf. That's that frontal boundary that we had moved through that's giving all that thunderstorm activity there off the coast of Mexico. But as far as any development goes, nothing expected in this part of the basin. But we do have a hurricane out there. This is Hurricane Umberto. As of the latest advisory, it is a hurricane with winds of 75 miles per hour and expected to become a Category 4. So it is expected to strengthen pretty significantly and could do so here as we go through the weekend. And then the models mostly take it here between Bermuda and the east coast of the U.S. So this one looks like it's going to thread the needle there between the two land masses. But there is another area that is of far greater concern to the East Coast. This one is located there just off the coast of Hispaniola and Cuba. High chance of developing over the next 7 days. And as it does so, it's going to be moving north-northwest through the Bahamas. And eventually, that's going to take it towards a motion that's going to bring it there, approaching the coast of the eastern U.S., maybe even as a hurricane. The models take it there somewhere between Savannah and Charleston for a landfall of the center of that circulation. But as far as exactly where it goes, we really need to have a well-defined center of circulation before the models can really grasp onto where this system's going to go. So really it needs to organize a little bit more into a depression or a tropical storm before we can really tell you for sure who is going to be in the line of fire for this system. But as far as we're concerned here back home in East Texas, not going to be looking at anything tropical of nature here as we go through at least the next 7 days. Lots of sunshine today, 85 degrees. And tonight we'll see those temperatures fall into the 60s. It'll be mostly clear with calm winds. And of course, it's Friday, which means it's time for some football as Mildred takes on Westwood there in Palestine. Kickoff is at 7 p.m. 79 for that kickoff temperature, cooling into the 60s by the end of the game. Also, your game of the week takes us to Troop as they take on ARP. Kickoff is at 7:30 with mostly sunny skies, 77 degrees, and mostly clear, and 60s by the end of the game. Here's a look at that pollen count. Still, of course, showing those very high levels of ragweed out there and also high levels of mold spores. So if you are an allergy sufferer like myself, of course, limit your time outdoors. Make sure you're taking that Claritin, all those decongestants, because certainly still lots of allergens floating around. And your 7-day forecast shows that we're going to have dry weather here through the next 7 days. Those highs will be in the 80s. Those lows will be very refreshing in those 60s. And Deep East Texas will be just a touch warmer, maybe getting close to 90 by the end of next week. But of course, it's going to be lower humidity, so that's going to help keep those feels like temperatures right there around that actual temperature. So overall, really not too bad of a forecast here over the next 7 days.
Absolutely not a bad forecast. This is perfect fair weather, I have to say. And we have a lot of events happening, outdoor events happening over the weekend. So you all look at that. You're set up perfectly. And something else that's set up perfectly is our pecan season. And
Yes.
Braden, I'm going to have to go ahead. I got to jump into this story right away because I feel like this forecast is perfect to go right into our next story. Like we said, you may have woken up to some cooler temperatures outside, a beautiful sunrise, and these are all signs that fall is inching its way into East Texas. Along with fall comes harvest season for pecan growers, and I sat down with pecan specialist Dr. Nesbitt from Texas A&M University to discuss what we can expect from this year's harvest season. And you all, I cannot wait any longer to get you this story because we learned a lot about like ways to pick out the best pecans and kind of what this season is looking like. So here that is. So as some of you may know, pecan harvest is about to begin in parts of the state and will continue into winter. And today I am joined by Dr. Monty Nesbitt, an AgriLife Extension pecan specialist and assistant professor in the Texas A&M Department of Horticultural Sciences, who will break down the 2025 harvest season. Dr. Nesbitt, how are you doing today?
Doing great, Haley. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. We're excited. I myself am a pecan lover, so I'm excited to learn more about this. But let's just start off by defining the factors that make up a harvest season for pecans. So what's a good harvest season and what's a bad harvest season?
Well, a good harvest season is dry because we began to get out in the orchard with equipment in dry leaf matter, dry ground conditions, dry everything is what's helpful. We're
Okay.
coming out of a really dry growing season and we want to return to rainfall, but for harvest, when we're out there actually picking up the pecans with this equipment, and we like the pecans themselves to dry down, so dry is good. So there's a little bit of a turnaround from what we want during the growing season, which is an abundance of rainfall for the trees.
Okay. See, I didn't know that. I didn't know that dry was the way to go and that it flips that fast. But that's interesting to learn. So I myself, like I mentioned before, I love pecans and I've eaten quite a few pecan pies in my life. But I've never
Mhm.
really thought, is this a good or a bad pecan? So I'm very curious. What are the qualities of a good pecan if you're eating one?
Yeah, so you want light color. You want kind of a creamy vanilla, light tan. When you open up a pecan, the kernel, which is 75% oil, has kind of a characteristic tan beige color, and you want that as opposed to brown. Brown tends to convey that there's been some stress factors, maybe some rancidity already happening. So we like light, creamy, light golden color. And you want it to be brittle. When you take a pecan out of the shell, you want to be able to you do what's called a snap test. You bend it and it should snap. You can actually audibly hear the snap of the kernel break. That means it's dry enough, about 4% moisture. As we just said, dry is good. So we want the kernel to dry. And if it snaps or breaks, that's a good sign.
Okay, that's good to know. Now I will probably never eat a pecan the same again. I will always think about this.
Snap first,
Snap.
yeah.
I'm gonna have to do it. I may go buy some just to do this today. But okay, so we talked about how weather plays a really, really big part in harvest. So what is this season looking like here in East Texas and really here in like I said, East Texas particular in the entire state?
Sure. So we're a big state, and I tell people that we really have about 4 or 5 different pecan growing states within the state of Texas. So we take Northeast Texas, where you are. This is a rainy area of the state that normally has a fair amount of disease pressure. And this year, the early part of the springtime was favorable for pecan diseases. In particular, there's one called pecan scab disease. Not a nice word. Scab doesn't sound good. So it will look like black velvety specks or spots. Those will begin to kind of grow and expand. You can end up with a black shuck, which should be healthy and vibrant green color. If you're going out there looking at what your pecan crop looks like, and will you have a pecan crop, or you're picking some up off the ground, if there's a lot of black dark shucks, it could mean that there's been a problem with pecan scab. And we expect that this East Texas, Northeast Texas had pretty high pressure from scab this year. And unfortunately, that can mean less than stellar kernel quality as we get here to harvest.
Okay, so that was a lot of information, a lot that I probably should go back, listen to again, and make sure that I can understand because that's interesting. But you're saying, okay, right now we could not be seeing the best pecans. So are producers and consumers facing any challenges when it comes to the cost of pecans or the availability of them in for this 2025 season?
Well, availability should be good. I mean, we have resilient growers that kind of know how to get around some of these weather challenges. They know how to water at the right time. They know how to spray fungicides to prevent scab at the right time. So we have some astute pecan growers in our community. The Texas Pecan Growers Association has a website. You can go there and find all the people who sell pecans direct from the farm to consumer. We expect pecan availability to be really good and some outstanding quality. Homeowners and people with maybe a small orchard in their on their property that's not really actively farmed or managed, they sometimes are the ones that have these challenges because they don't have quite the tool set to deal with pecan scab, to deal with pecan weevils or some of the insect problems that come along. So it's going to look very different for the homeowner versus the commercial producer. We expect some great success on the commercial side. We anticipate some of the homeowners, people in your viewing area may say, "What's wrong with my pecans this year?" And early spring rains and early summer rains, unfortunately, create some challenges that show up right now as we want to go out, walk around, pick up, and experience the fall in our pecan crop. And sometimes those results are a little disappointing.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is the time, like you said, when we are out there wanting to pick them up because we're also getting closer to that Thanksgiving time where we're cooking those special
Mhm.
foods. So I have an odd question for you. What is your favorite thing to make out of pecans? I just have to know.
Well, here's a tip. I like to put pecans in chili. So you cook chili, a hot steaming bowl of chili for Thanksgiving or a football game. Throw some pecans in late. Cook most of your chili, let it simmer a lengthy period of time, and give the pecans maybe the last 20, 30 minutes, and they'll float around. They'll have just the right texture, and they add a little bit of extra Texas to that chili. So,
I love it. I haven't seen, listen, I'm a very picky eater, so I haven't had chili, but now you may have, like, I love pecans, so I may have to try it and see what it's about. That's awesome.
Texas Texas chili with pecans in it is a good thing. So,
Top tier. Imma have to see about it. Imma have to check it out. Okay, so is there anything else that, pecan lovers or those, people at home that may have, like, those small orchards that you said in their backyard that we should know about this harvest season? Is there something that maybe I missed over?
well, you have to be on your toes if you do have pecans, the squirrels, the raccoons, possums, all these animals that live around these trees. They're hungry this time of year. And so unfortunately, you have to be pretty proactive Get out there when your pecans start falling. If you have a windstorm, once we get past frost, that will really accelerate the dropping of pecans. And so you have to go out a little bit every day or several times a week and gather a few. You don't have to get them all at one time, but those squirrels, birds, blue jays, crows, raccoons, they're after them also. So if you like nature, having a pecan tree is great because nature's going to come to you.
True. You can get to watch the animals, but make sure that they're not eating your pecans, because then you're
That's
not gonna
right.
have many. What would you say?
Right.
What animal, I guess, would you say is the biggest threat to them?
Squirrels.
Squirrels.
Squirrels, they're busy all the time. A squirrel, one lone squirrel can remove about 48 pounds of pecans either through eating or stashing them. You know, they hide them, bury them. And so one squirrel, and a lot of our neighborhoods in Texas have got a lot of squirrels. The squirrels move from tree to tree. It's hard to, restrict them to the ground. We can kind of restrict raccoons with metal sleeves around the base of the tree. Can't do that with squirrels. So squirrels are our biggest challenge this time of year to the pecan crop.
Wow, and they're so darn cute, but they can't eat our pecans. We just can't have that happen. So we have
They're
to
not
make
cute in
sure.
a pecan tree. Hmm.
Yeah, we have to make sure that they can't get to those, or at least take really, really good care of those pecan trees in your backyard. But Dr. Nesbitt, you've been awesome. Thank you so, so much for all of this great information. Do you have any tips for anybody out there that's growing or wanting to grow pecans?
Well, we have a lot of information. You can go to Texas A&M AgriLife Extension website. AgriLife Learn is a repository, a library of a lot of fact sheets that will help you. Texas Pecan Growers Association is great for finding a pecan producer around you
Okay.
who is selling the very freshest, best pecans right to you, the consumer. So tpga.org is a great website for help on that.
Okay. Perfect. Well, this was awesome. Thank you so much for joining me today. We
Great.
hopefully will be able to sit down and talk again and see how next year is looking.
Fantastic.
So, as some of you may know, well, you all, that was my interview yesterday with Dr. Nesbitt. He was awesome. You all learned I love pecans and chili. I asked the newsroom. They were kind of like, I don't know about that, but I feel like we got to try. You know, you got to try everything once in life. So maybe I'll have to venture out and try. But Dr. Nesbitt was awesome. Had a lot of great information. So you all can expect some good production from our producers that are commercial producers. But if you have a pecan tree in your backyard, you may not be in the best shape, but he gave us a lot of great tips that you can use to make sure you all can move forward with your pecans this year. But you all, that's going to wrap up that section of our show. When we come back, we will be talking about road rage and kind of how drivers are experiencing more of that lately. We'll find out why that may be happening and how you can stay calm when behind the wheel. So we'll have that right after this break. Well, hello and welcome back here to East Texas Today on KTK Plus. You all, we are diving into the subject of road rage. AAA has done a study where they're saying they're seeing an increase in road rage, and we're going to talk to Daniel Armbruster a little bit about why we may be seeing this and ways and tips that he has that you all can stay calm when behind the wheel. So we're going to go ahead and jump right into that, and here that is. I have Daniel Armbruster with me. Daniel, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, Haley. Good to see you.
It's good to see you too. Like I said before we started recording, I said long time no see. It hasn't been me and Daniel sitting here in a minute, but I'm excited to be back. We have a topic that I would say is a pretty good one because you're saying there's some rises, or we're seeing some rises in road rage.
Yeah, AAA actually did a study, the AAA Foundation for Traffic Safety, and we looked at data as well as focus groups and a survey, and it found some alarming statistics that, I wasn't expecting. And I've been doing this for almost 10 years now, related to aggressive driving as well as road rage.
Wow. And it's sad because I've been traveling a lot more lately and I've been seeing a lot more road rage where people are honking at each other, getting mad, doing some bad things on the road. But that study that you're talking about says almost everyone drives aggressively, which, like I said, I can attest to. So, what exactly does that mean?
Yeah, so 96% of drivers admit to driving aggressively at least once in the past year, according to this study. And that can include things like running lights, red lights, speeding, honking out of anger, cutting someone off. What's striking about this study and the results is that almost everyone both experiences aggressive driving and does it themselves. And that's becoming kind of a universal problem on our roads. As you said, you've been seeing more of it, and you're not alone. A lot of people, nearly all of those that we talked to, uh, saw aggressive driving on the road and also experienced it themselves to some degree.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm going to admit to guilt here. I feel like my patience with people on the road and driving has lessened. And I can see that aggression in myself. I wouldn't say it's to the manner of which some people have it, but it is like you get a little bit, you're quicker to get irritated. But okay, so why do people drive this way? What's the thought process behind it, and what's behind that aggression?
Yeah, kind of a sign of the times, right? This study found two big motivators, though. First, drivers say that they're reacting to perceived dangers from others. That was about 65% that reported that. Second, many drivers admit that they're just trying to get somewhere faster. About 55% cited that. Unfortunately, when we look at the details of the study, it looks like stress, impatience, and congestion are often fueling those behaviors that lead to aggressive driving and sometimes road rage.
Yeah, stress. You know what? Stress and impatience are probably like two of my biggest factors of where it's just like, and rushing. I mean, we should probably be a little bit more timely and leave early so that we aren't in a rush and we don't put that on other people. But that report even mentions violent driving. I told my manager about this segment that we were doing, and she mentioned like what first came to mind was a story from a while ago where people actually shot at one another after driving. So, can you talk to me a little bit about what does violent driving look like?
Yeah, and this isn't just happening in bigger cities. We're now seeing this in smaller areas, as even rural areas to some degree. Not as much as you would see in the big city, obviously, because you have more traffic, et cetera. But when we look at violent driving, Haley, about 11% of drivers admitted to some violent action. That could include bumping another car on purpose or physically confronting another driver. We have video of that in the B-roll video that we're sending out with this study, caught on camera. Drivers violently attacking other drivers because they're upset. So it's a serious escalation of road rage, is what it is. And it's very dangerous for anyone involved. One thing about this study is that men were more likely to engage in violent behaviors, but overall, aggressive driving crosses age, income, and gender lines.
Wow. So it doesn't really matter. People are just irritated and they're doing it. And it's super unsafe. You end up on the news here for bad reasons for doing this. Because like I said, I've seen it. I've heard about it where people are following people to areas to confront them. And we report on it. It's kind of crazy to even think that it gets that far. But I mean, sadly, it does. But are we seeing changes in how people are driving compared to the past? I know we've seen a spike, but are we seeing it? Are we seeing changes on the roadway?
Yeah, and most of it's going in the wrong direction. One thing that we're seeing a little less of since 2016, which was the last time that we took a deep dive into this topic here at AAA. Uh, since 2016, we've actually seen less tailgating and yelling. However, you pointed this one out earlier. Honking is out of anger is up about 47% in the last 9 years. That's a very big increase. And then when we're also talking about people cutting each other off, that's up 67%. So those are kind of the two behaviors that we see a lot more of. Of course, there's other aggressive driving behaviors, and it evolves over time. The bottom line is, though, it's still widespread. It's a widespread problem, and it's not getting better. In fact, when you look at the year-over-year data statewide here in Texas, more crashes were caused by road rage in 2024 than in 2023. So that it's not going in the right direction as far as the amount of crashes that occur because of road rage driving.
That's crazy that we're not going in the right direction in this. People need to calm down, take a breather, take 5 seconds, inhale, take a deep breath. And as I'm speaking about these little methods that I think in my head when if I'm getting irritated or anxious on the road, I know you have some tips that what can drivers do to avoid these situations or respond if they encounter an aggressive driver?
Yeah, you said it. Take a deep breath. Courtesy really counts here. Simple things like using your turn signal, letting people merge, giving a friendly wave can calm situations down as well. If you do see an aggressive driver, don't react. Stay calm, give them space. That's really important. And I think one of the most important things is avoiding eye contact because if someone you make that eye contact and that can really escalate a situation. We know that from studies. But if you do encounter someone that becomes violent, you don't want to drive home because you don't want to let that person know where you live, right? Instead, head to a public place or call 911. But bottom line is protecting yourself and others. That is what matters most in these situations.
Absolutely. And if you're an aggressive driver out there and you're listening, just don't do it. Take that deep breath in and take a moment because these are people's lives that are on the line and matter a lot. So Daniel, if we could wrap up kind of what we've talked about, what are those key takeaways that people need to, keep at the front of their mind before hitting the road?
Yeah, I think overall, as we pointed out, things are going in the wrong direction. But the good news is that these are behaviors that are preventable, right? We can help create a safer, calming driving culture for everyone, but it takes everyone doing their part. And so, it's up to each individual to take those steps, be courteous, and just make sure that you're being the best driver that you can be on the road and a courteous driver as well.
Absolutely. Like you said, use those turn signals, people, because they help us a lot and it keeps our stress level down. But thank you so much, Daniel. This was awesome. And I think it's something that's very needed because we're living in a stressful time period. And so people are putting that out on other people, and we don't need that to happen. But y'all, that wraps up our segment of Travel Tuesday. So you all, thank you so much for joining us. Daniel, thank you for joining me. It's good to see you again. And as always, you all can tune in for our Travel Tuesday segments here on KTK Plus every single Tuesday. I have Daniel Armbruster with me. Well, you all, you hear how that said Travel Tuesday. We had a lot going on this week, and it wasn't able to air on Tuesday, but I was not going to let this week pass without you all being able to hear this information from AAA because I believe that it does make a difference here in our community and when we're hitting the road. So you all just keep in mind, stay calm when behind the wheel, and let's make those numbers go down. That's not numbers that we want to increase. But like I said, you'll end up up here on the news, and we don't want to be talking about that here. But we're going to move into some events that we have happening this weekend. The Naranjo Museum, and y'all, I'm sorry if I'm saying it wrong. I promise I'm trying. But they are having a list of events happening over the weekend, and we actually was able to speak to the museum director about these events, and she just tells us a little bit more. So I say we go ahead and jump right into that. Like I said, this is the museum director of that museum here in Lufkin. So we're going to go ahead and listen to her.
First question is the easiest. What's going on?
All right, so we have a lot of exciting events coming up, even this weekend.
We need to have the correct lower third there, and I'm going to go ahead and make that change here live. So give me 1 second here. Let me go ahead and get that right for you all, because that just should not be what you all are looking at. There we go. So we're going to go ahead and move that out the way. Come back to me. Here is that story that you all, without that incorrect information on the bottom of your screen.
First question is the easiest. What's going on?
All right, so we have a lot of exciting events coming up, even this weekend, for families and patrons of the museum. Our first, we have the Artifact Identification Weekend, and that is where visitors can bring in their own artifacts that they're not sure what it might be. And Dr. Naranjo and Morris Weeks will do their best to identify these artifacts. And there is no limit on how many objects people can bring in.
And just what does that do for the community or for people who like finding artifacts?
Well, artifact finding is a lot like treasure hunting, but you might find something and you're not sure what it might be. Maybe it's a fossil, it could be anything. And having an expert, someone who has spent their lifetime studying these things, really helps with the identification process. And it's great to know what it is that you found.
Now, we also heard that y'all got a new playground going on, so tell me a bit about that.
We have been in the process of putting in this playground for about a year, and it is very close to being finished and ready. Not only did we put in a playground, we've got a fenced park area that'll be safe for families. We're planning on bringing in food trucks, having this really as an event space, and we're going to be offering, when the playground opens, extended hours for museum members so that they will be able to come after work, enjoy the space with their families, grab a bite to eat, maybe a drink at the food trucks, and just really enjoy being outside, the space, all of that.
Let's talk about the passport. What is the passport?
Okay, so I'll actually hold this up. All of the cultural sites, so the other museum, the Texas Forestry Museum, the Museum of East Texas, the Ellen Trout Zoo, the Naranjo Museum, and the Kurth Memorial Library are all participating in our passport. And this is a chance, this is free for families to participate. You go and visit each of our cultural sites in Lufkin. And if you look inside our passport, you'll see that there are different activities that you have to do at every place you visit. Once you've done those activities, you get a stamp to collect on the front. When your collection is complete, you take this back to the Texas Forestry Museum and you're entered to win a quarterly prize. So we'll be doing a drawing every quarter, and this prize is all sorts of things from all of our cultural sites.
And just for people who aren't from around here, what is the Naranjo Natural History Museum?
The Naranjo Museum of Natural History was founded by Dr. Neil and Mary Ann Naranjo, and it was built in 2012. And we house an extensive collection of artifacts from the beginning of time all the way through human history. So it's a wide date range of objects and artifacts. We offer school tours, guided tours, immersive touch experiences. In fact, this weekend, during Artifact Weekend, we'll have a docent with several fossils that you'll be able to touch if you come in to visit us this weekend. And so we just want to be a source of cultural entertainment for East Texas. We want you to come and learn, and we also want you to have fun doing it.
And just how does it feel when you have events like the artifact finding, or since y'all now have a playground and all that, how does it feel to see the visitors just come in and have a good time and learn something along the way?
It really feels like we're serving our community. I've heard for a long time, what is there to do in Lufkin? There's not a lot for kids and things like that. And I think that it's really important that we do what we can to fill those gaps and offer people a safe place to come, enjoy, learn something, and have fun.
All right, you all. Well, as you see, there is a lot of events happening there in Lufkin. So you all make sure that you're down there this weekend to enjoy them and bring your artifacts. One thing when I spoke to her and she talked about this is that she got a lot of artifacts from here in Tyler. So you all make sure that you bring those artifacts there so that they can try and figure out what they are, what you're bringing, and then tell us so that we can tell the rest of East Texas about it. But y'all, that's going to wrap up this section for now. We'll come back after the break. And there is one more event happening that I want to get together so that I can tell you all that information. So stick around after this break.